welcome to Tarun IS. Today we will be discussing editorials from The Hindu of 17th of October 2022. So let's start with first editorial of the day. The topic which I have taken is inner party democracy. As today on the 17th of October 2022, the party president election for the Congress party is being conducted. The party president election for the Congress party is being conducted. Therefore, this article which is written by a member from the Congress itself. However, I have added some other points in this topic so as to make it more holistic and make it more comprehensive from the exam perspective. So let's start with the inner party democracy. You can relate this article with General Studies paper 2, that is structure, organization and functioning of the formal informal associations and their role in polity. I have taken this article from The Hindu, that is the plumbing of inner party democracy. Now basically, when we are discussing this topic, the first question that arises is, what is inner party democracy? When we speak of the democracy, the most simplest definition of democracy is that the governance that was given by the Abraham Lincoln, the governance of the people, for the people and by the people. The government for the people, of the people and by the people, right? So this is what democracy in its simplest form is. However, democracy is not as simple as this quote by Abraham Lincoln has said. The democracy has two offshoots which needs to be fulfilled so as to achieve the objectives of the democracy. The first is the procedural democracy and second is the substantial democracy. When we speak of the procedural democracy, then procedural democracy means that the procedures which are conducted so as to achieve the objectives of the democracy. The first is the conduct of the elections, the fair and free conduct of election is the procedural democracy, and substantial democracy is by upholding the values of the democracy. Alright, so we have procedural democracy and we have substantial democracy. And if I am to define inter-party democracy or inner party democracy, then it basically refers to the set of rules within political parties which promotes a bottom-up approach to decision making. That means it ensures the effective distribution of power amongst functionaries to enable inclusivity and participation of the diverse people. So basically, if I am to define inner party democracy, that it simply means to establish the set of rules within the political parties which promotes bottom-up approach. That means every member of the political party, whether a political leader or a member working at the grassroots level, is of utmost importance in decision making, and every person who is member of the party and working to realize the objectives of the party have equal importance irrespective of the region, irrespective of the regionality, the caste, creed and etc. That means it ensures and it must enable the inclusivity and participation of the diverse person. Alright. Now the question arises that we have been speaking of the inner party democracy, but the point is that why do we need inner party democracy? The first point that comes is the trust building. If the political party does not have the inner party democracy, that means in its aim to achieve the political objectives, if the political party itself is not adhering to the principles of the democracy, then the people of the nation who vote in the periodic election to elect political leaders fielded by the political parties as their representative will not be fulfilled. Therefore, inner party democracy ensures trust building. And political parties, since I said that political parties are basically the representatives. Now, when we speak of the democracy that India has, it is a representative democracy. Therefore, the political parties becomes of utmost importance. And the second point is that it is a participatory democracy. That means the people of India periodically, which is after every 5 years, elects their government. Therefore, there are two facets of democracy in India. The first that it is representative, and the second is that it is participatory in nature. Inner party democracy is needed so as to ensure the substantial as well as the procedural democracy. And inner party democracy also prevents blind hero worship. If I recall Dr. Ambedkar, then he was against hero worshipping. He was absolutely not in favor of hero worshipping. He was absolutely not in favor of giving absolute power to any one person. So therefore, he was against this new concept that we see in the world today called demagogues. Right. So there arise many political leaders who assumes absolute and unfettered political party, which makes them directly or indirectly a dictator. Conducting periodic election does not necessarily means that a country has democracy. If the elections are not free and fair, if they are influenced or manipulated by many factors, then we cannot consider that the country has achieved a substantial democracy. It has achieved a procedural democracy, but in order to achieve the substantial democracy, it must uphold the principles of democracy, and it must uphold the values of democracy when it conducts the procedural democracy and in overall nation building. So therefore, inner party democracy would prevent hero worshipping. There will not be any one political leader which will have this unfettered political power. It also prevents the criminalization of democracy. All right. Now, according to the ADR report, which is Association of Democratic Reforms, according to this ADR report, the 17th Lok Sabha, it has in fact surpassed the previous Lok Sabha's record of having 43% of its members facing criminal charges. That means if we have inner party democracy, criminalization of the politics will be prevented. And criminalization of politics is altogether a different topic, and we will be dealing with it in a different class. But right now we will restrict ourselves to inner party democracy. So we have spoken of what inner party democracy is. We spoke of why do we need inner party democracy. Now let us talk about and yes, of course, the inner party democracy is also needed for the inclusivity. The inner party democracy is also needed for inclusivity. Right. If I am to consider a status given by a survey, then there were approximately 8,000 candidates who contested election in 2019 Lok Sabha, and out of these 8,000 elections, approximately 700 were women. So there is no inclusivity when it comes to contesting election, when it comes to even have a procedural democracy. And if we do not have the substantial democracy, then the procedural democracy can also not be established in a country. So this is one fact. And if I am to consider another fact that was taken by the survey, is that when it's about contestation of the election by the people or by the member of the vulnerable communities, whether we speak of the scheduled caste community, scheduled tribes, or we speak of the minorities. So there is very less participation of the people from such communities. So in order to have inclusive democracy, we must adhere to the principle of substantial democracy when it comes to the conduct and when it comes to the conduct and business of the political parties, especially in the context of inner party democracy. Now let's talk about that. What does the law says about inner party democracy? Well, there is no such provision for inner party democracy. There is no law with respect to the conduct of the election or periodic election in the political parties to choose the political leader or the party president. However, there are two important points which needs to be kept in mind when it comes to inner party democracy. The first one is the Section 29 of the Representation of Peoples Act of 1951. What does this act says? The Section 29 only talks about the registration of the political parties. That means there is no such provision either by law or even by the order giving power to the Election Commission of India to establish inner party democracy when it comes to the political parties. However, there are three important commissions that recommended for the inner party democracy, and these commissions were: the first commission was the second ARC, the second Administrative Reform Commission, which had recommended for the inner party democracy, and the second point is the National Commission for review of working of Constitution, and the third commission was the Law Commission, which recommended for the inner party democracy. Now, the writer, in his article which he has written in the Hindu newspaper, he discusses the challenges of establishing inner party democracy, and through these challenges we will be understanding various facets of the inner party democracy. The first is that the writer says that in order to establish the inner party democracy, the political parties would require the institutional capacity which is comparable to the Election Commission of India in order to implement it. Now, currently, today is on 17th of October, we will be having Congress party undergoing the election for its party president, and two leaders are contesting election. The Mallikarjun Kharage and Dr. Shashi Tharoor, both of them are contesting election for the party president. However, the writer says that in the state units and the election, and the person who is responsible for conducting the election when it comes to the political parties is responsible for appointing the returning officers in each units of the state of the political party, right? So writer points towards the lack of institutional capacity. The writer also points towards the procedure of the election. The first point that the writer suggests is the voters, that who will be voting in the election. Is it the all category of the workers? If all category of the workers are to vote in the election, then the writer points towards that how are we going to ensure that these are the genuine workers or the genuine people voting in the election. So therefore you can connect this point to the first point of lack of institutional capacity. The second point that writer says that would only office bearers be voting in the election or the selected leaders. If this is the scenario, then there is no point of having the inner party democracy, because that would lack the inclusivity. Now, the third point that the writer points towards is the basis for the election. That what would be the basis for the election? Like how the leader who is contesting the election is going to reform or form the agenda for its election, so as to ensure the genuine person is elected. The fourth point that the writer points towards is about the defection. We know that since 1980s, India has anti-defection law. India does have anti-defection law. However, the writer says that what is the guarantee that the people who are elected for the post will not defect to another party given certain incentives, monetary or non-monetary. So this is the concern that writer raises. The basis of the election, and what is the guarantee that the defections will not happen. And the writer points towards the eligibility to contest. Like what will be the eligibility of the person who is contesting the election, the age criteria, the experience criteria, and etc. as decided by the consensus when it comes to the political parties. The another point that the writer raises, or the concern that writer raises, is the external influence or the manipulation, that how such a wide scale election of a political party can be protected from the external influence or manipulation. And the last challenge that writer points towards is the impartiality of the returning officers who is conducting election at the state unit. So we discussed about the inner party democracy. So far we discussed that what is inner party democracy, and we discussed the facets of democracy, that is substantial democracy and the procedural democracy. We also discussed that why do we need inner party democracy. We discussed that what the law says when it comes to inner party democracy. We also discussed the challenges of inner party democracy. So with this, we finished this editorial. Thank you for watching Tarun IAS.